Hey guys, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So is it echo free or means you're hearing some echo?
No, we don't have any echo.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, guys. Good morning, good evening to all of you. So do we have whole strength over here? Yeah. So we have Dinesh, like Subhanjan, Varun. Don't we have over here? Dhruv. Okay. So let it be. So we are already against recording this video. So okay. So first of all, guys, please let me know. Have you ever used PyTorch for development or like defining neural network? Any of you? Dinesh, everyone,
No, Mayur.
Prabhanjan, Varun.
No.
No.
What about you, Varun? Did you use it earlier? Varun, hello. Okay. Let it be. Not any issue. Not any. So thing is that before going there, so the thing is that PyTorch and Keras are two frameworks. That's something we use to define neural network and train neural networks. Okay. So today we're gonna have tutorial regarding deep neural net means related to PyTorch. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Not an issue, Varun. Okay. So when you whatever you want to say, you can yeah, you can type that in chat box. Okay. So before going to this framework or this tool, I would like to tell you a little bit about deep neural network. Okay. So guys, have you taken any course from Andrew NG related to deep neural networks or deep learning? Any of you? If
No.
yes, please put that in chat box. If no, also put it there. Okay, okay, not an issue. Okay, so let's get started. So thing is that let's say we have one mathematical equation of the form y is equal to f of x. Okay, so here x is the input and y is the output. Okay, so if you have to solve this problem mathematically, then we generally use least square method or regression method, and that's how we form a relation between x and y. Okay, so that's the simple problem. But when size of input increases, so in that situation, what we generally do, we tend to use a deep neural network to solve those problems. Okay. So in that situation, what we generally used to have is something of this form. Okay, so let's say uh, we have input over here. Let's say x, then we will have a perceptron over here. That's the neural network or like element of neural network, and then we will have output over here. Okay, so that's the basically thing. So when we have to solve this thing mathematically, we will just like y is equal to f of x, and whatever operation that we gonna do will be happening over here. Okay, but in case of the neural network, generally two things happen over here. Okay, inside this perceptron. So basically, this perceptron is something which mimic the neuron inside our brain. Okay, so it receives information from input. Okay, it processes that. Two operations happen over here. First is like linear operation. Okay, and then second operation is non-linear activation. Okay, so we use activation function second part, and we get some output from here, and that's something we display over here. Okay, or we pass to this layer. Okay, so that's the basic structure. Okay, then as I mentioned earlier, we generally two operations happen over here. Okay, so first operation is where we perform a linear means linear algebra. Okay, so W here is weights. Okay, so let's say we have two inputs over here. Okay, so we generally decide, means we generally tend to have some sort of weight values over here. We multiply we multiply our input values with these weight values. We get some certain value, and then we add some bias value that over there. Okay, so if you have ever gone through state vector machine, so in that case what it means, we generally use state vector machine to classify element or output into two or more classes. Okay, so in that situation, let's say we take some input vector, we multiply with let's say we are taking x as like let's say equation of the form y is equal to x square. So that's the mathematical equation. Okay, so here if we take value of x to be 2, then we should be get y is equal to 4. Okay, so then we can call it is like a square value or something like that. So in that situation, let's say we are taking x as a 2 over here, then our weight value should be 2, okay, over here. But if our weight value provided over here is like 1.5 or something, then what we will get? We will get 3. Then in that situation, to classify it properly, to get that 4 value over there, we need to add some bias value over there. Okay, so that's how we get output. But basically what happening in this first part is basically just linear means operations are happening on this input variable. Okay, so here we have like two variables that we can play with, and basically these variables is something being adjusted and trained, means manipulated during training operation. Okay, so this w is something we call as like weights, and this b is something called as a bias. Okay, and x is the input and y is the output. So basically for this y we generally call them as like logic values. Okay, so this is the first thing which is happening over here. Then in second part, what happens, we perform non-linear activation. Okay, because in some situation, as in the case of like y is equal to x square, that thing is not linear, right? So there is like some sort of higher degree curve, means higher degree element present over there. Okay, so if you have to solve such sort of means if you have to have such sort of correlations in our input and output data, in between output and input data, we need to use non-linear activation functions. Okay, so generally what we do, we get like y cap is equal to yes of y. Okay, and that y, so yes, basically over here is a non-linear activation function. So there are various non-linear activation function which are available over there. Okay, so first one is, let's say you have to do bilinear means yeah, you have to classify element into two categories only. So in that situation you use sigmoid activation function. Okay, so it has formulation of the form like 1 divided by 1 plus e raised to minus x. So that's the sigmoid activation function. Okay, so that's something which representing using this es variable. Okay, the next thing is so that's the sigmoid activation function. So that's when only we have to, means when we have data and we just want to classify that into like two categories. In that situation we use sigmoid activation function, non-linear activation function. I'm just talking about second part. Okay, so that's the sigmoid activation function. But when you have multi-class classification problem, so in that situation you tend to use softmax activation function. Okay, so softmax activation function has a formulation of the form like y is equal to e raised to x divided by summation of e raised to x. Basically you are just normalizing this thing and you are trying to get probability values between 0 and 1, and then you are going for that class which has like maximum value. Okay, so that is the softmax activation function. Then third is like a hyperbolic tangent. So that's something we use when we are dealing with recurrent neural networks. Okay, so it has formulation of the form like e raised to x minus e raised to minus x divided by e raised to x plus e raised to minus x. Okay, so that's the hyperbolic tangent, and that's something we just use in the case of like recurrent neural network when we have to maintain temporal flow of our information. So that's the hyperbolic tangent. Then fourth thing that we generally use, actually we use in a lot of, means every neural network you will find that is the rectified linear unit, and it has a form like if x value, that is the like this logic value, if it's greater than 0 then we keep as it is. If it's less than 0 then we pass 0 to like next layer. Okay, so we have like this four activation function which we use majorly. Okay, so this perceptron is basically form of these two operations. First is a linear operation and then this is a non-linear operation. Okay, so you receive input so this is x1, this is x2, this is the weight value 1, this is weight value 2, and we generally also consider bias value. Okay, to get like that classification done properly. So that is the b. Okay, I will also explain about like how, means when our network is like underfitted and when our network is overfitted. Okay, so basically this is a like typical representation of one perceptron. Okay, so this is like simple artificial neural network. Okay, so these are like input layers, this is output layer, and when you have one perceptron in between here, so basically you call this as like state vector machine, or you can call it as like perceptron or simple neural network. Okay, so this is the first thing. Okay, so it's the simple artificial neural network. So here perceptron. Okay, in some situations you have to deal with like complex processes or complex operations. So in that situation you can like stack number of perceptron for that particular layer. Okay, you might have like 2 perceptron over here, you might have like 2 or 3 neuron over here, or 4 neuron over here. Okay, inside this layer you may have, it means when you call perceptron, you may call it as like neuron as well. Okay, so you may have like 4 neuron, 5 neuron, or 6 neuron over here. Okay, so that is the like simple artificial neural network, so simplest one. Okay, but when, so let's say this is the input layer, this is the output layer, and this is something we call as a hidden layer. Okay, when you have just one hidden layer, then that's something we call as artificial neural network. When you have like more than one hidden layer, okay, over here you might have like another hidden layer over here, you may have like another hidden layer over here. Okay, so in that situation we call that as a deep neural network. Okay, so I hope this thing is clear, and like this classification is clear to you. So artificial neural network, then deep neural network. Okay, so thing is that here we are just dealing with numeric data. Okay, just numeric data, nothing else. But thing is that when we want to put this thing into real life applications, and when we want to solve any particular kind of problem, then this representation is not enough. Okay, so let's say we want to solve some problem related to computer vision. That's something we need extensively when we have to build perception models. So I'll soon share like 3 or 4 lecture related to that with you. Okay, I was supposed to share that with you yesterday only, but I was busy yesterday. So tonight I'll upload them to Drive. Okay, so basically so if your application is computer vision, so in that situation you tend to get image as an input. Okay, so what's basically image? Image is basically like 3 layers stacked one above another, and they have like color channels. Okay, 3 color channels, red, green, and blue. Okay, and their color means then based on your resolution you will have like number of pixels over there, and for each pixel you will have like different 3 color values, and their color values can go from 0 to 255. Okay, so basically that's the image. Okay, but thing is that for that, if you have to process this image, what you generally want to do is you want to maintain spatial relation as it is. Okay, so I'm just drawing simple representation. So let's say I have some sphere over here. Okay, or just a circle over here. Okay, so thing is that it has like some part inside these pixels, inside this pixel, this pixel, this pixel. Okay, so what we have over here is we have some spatial relationship between all these pixels. Okay, so if we just like if we convert this entire, if we convert this entire image into like one dimensional vector, then what happens, we won't be able to like maintain this spatial information, right? So in that situation what we need to do, we need to use like convolutional neural network. Okay, so we need to use like convolutional layers over there. Okay, so we generally tend to use convolutional layers. So basically what we do, we use kernel of size like 2 by 2 or 3 by 3. Okay, and we just basically traverse that kernel across the length and height of image. Okay, and that's how we maintain a relationship between these adjacent pixels. But thing is that sometime let's say if I use like single convolutional 2D layer over here, okay, then still in that situation I won't be able to like capture this entire circle, right? So in that situation what I need to do is I need to use more than one convolutional layers over there. Okay, and then the thing is that when you use convolutional layers, you also want to like, so if you have to like capture this information in a subsequent layer, then you also need to reduce size of this image, right? So in that if you have to capture that thing with same kernel size, so you tend to use max pooling layer over here. Okay, max pooling layer is something like, let's say you are using kernel of size 2 by 2, so max pooling layer will what it will do is it will just like take maximum of these 4 pixel values. Okay, and that's how like size of this image will reduce. It will reduce by like, if you're using like max pooling of size 2 by 2, then it will reduce by half. Okay, so you get this layer over here, means this image converted to half of its size over here, then again use convolutional layer, then again max pooling layer, and finally you get like concise representation of that image. Okay, and that's something we call as a feature vector. Okay, then we flatten that feature vector and we can feed this thing as it is to this our artificial neural network. And if we combine this everything together, then we can call it as like convolutional neural network. Okay. So that's the convolutional neural networks. So thing is that convolutional neural networks are here to maintain the spatial relationship between these pixel values or input values. Okay. But thing is that sometimes we also want to maintain temporal relationship between input variables. Okay. So what I mean by that? So let's say you are working on battery management system, okay, and you want to just have means you just want to have some sort of relation between SOC value and temperature, voltage, and current values, okay. So thing is that all these values are like changing with respect to time, but when you want to frame this network, when you want to like develop this neural network, or when you want to form relation between SOC and that current values, which are varying with respect to time, when you want to get that equation, so in that instance, you need to consider current value at time instance t-1, t-2, or like based on like what's the horizon that you are considering. Okay, so basically you are like trying to keep that temporal relation over there, and that's basically a recurrent neural network. Okay, so when we have like convolutional neural network, we use like con2D layer over here, then ReLU as activation. When we have recurrent neural networks, we use like means that RNN layer. So basically that's the LSTM layer. Okay, so like long short term memory layer. So it has like 4 subcomponent in there, and then you use hyperbolic tangent as activation layer. Okay, then you get like feature vector over there, and that second same thing. Recurrent neural network is something you can also use for natural language processing. So that's the second application that people tend to people generally use. That's the application for which people use deep neural network extensively. Okay, and yeah, means entire research that's currently happening in this domain, means if you check all the like major companies in this domain, so they are working on natural language processing problem only right now. And for computer vision, most of them are working on like 3D depth estimation part. Okay, so that's something they are working on right now. So this is a recurrent neural network, then this is artificial neural network, and this is how you get output. Okay, so this is just this is how our problem should this is how our deep neural network look like. Okay, but then next thing is how exactly will you use this representation or this formulation to solve your problem. Okay, so thing is that we want to solve this problem using a lot of information, right? So how exactly you will solve this problem? So what you generally do is during training phase. So during training phase, what you generally do, you have feature vector ready with you. Okay, you have output vector ready with you. Okay, so this feature vector is something you call as like features. Y is something you call as the labels. Okay, so if you have like 10 feature vector, you should be having like 10 labels ready with you. Okay, so you have 10 features, 10 labels. You don't have W1, W2 value and B values with you. Okay, so that's something you will get once training is completed. So in the beginning, what you generally do is you initiate all these weight values and biases value randomly. Okay, means there are various standard or norms by which you can initiate. Means you can like initiate them with 0, but that doesn't like give that much accuracy, and there are issues with that. So people tend to initiate those values with some random values. Okay, means for all the weight values and biases value. Okay, so you do that thing, then you pass images or pass input values to this neural network. It goes through this linear operation layer, then it goes through activation, non-linear activation layer, and you get some logic values over here. Okay, so this y cap, something I said over here. Then what you do, you compare this y cap value with so y cap is something we have calculated output value, right? It might not be like exactly what we have for our level, right? So what you generally do is you calculate loss. Okay, so basically think like feeding input value into this network and getting output value over here. So that's something we call as a feed forwarding operation. And when you get output value over here, calculated output value, then you compare that thing with your expected output value. Okay, and that's how you calculate loss. Okay, so that's the loss. Loss is equal to 1 by m. So m is like size of sample. Then you use like summation, and then y is expected, then y cap is basically that's the square. So this is the mean square error. Okay, so you calculate loss between expected output value and calculated output value. Okay, so that's how you calculate loss. When you have to solve regression problems, so in that situation you use like this mean square error as like your criteria to calculate loss. When you are dealing with classification problems, in that situation you use that Kehl divergence formulation to calculate loss value. Okay, so you will like use loss of the form like categorical cross entropy for multi-class classification problem, and like means that's something you use of the form like 1 by m summation of y into log of y cap minus 1 minus y into log of 1 minus y cap. Okay, so using this means this using this Kehl divergence theorem, you calculate that loss. Okay, and that loss is something basically when you are trying to solve any particular problem using like a regression or like least square method, what you generally tend to do is you try to minimize that loss, right? So here also we want to minimize that loss. Okay, so but what we want to do over here is we want to solve that thing optimally. Okay, so when you tend to use okay, so when you want to solve this problem optimally or using optimization principles, there are two kind of optimization problems are there. Basically there are a lot, but if I have to like classify them like means generally, or like means if I have to like classify them, then I would put them into two categories. First is unconstrained optimization and constraint optimization. When you go for LKR or even means here along with our objective function, if we are considering other constraint as well, then we call that as like constraint optimization problem. So when you go for like LKR or MPC kind of problems, so basically those are constraint optimization kind of problems. Okay, but in case of the deep neural network, we really don't have any constraint, right? We just have one object, and that object is we just want to minimize this loss. Okay, so basically those are unconstrained optimization kind of problems, and so there are various approaches to solve that problem. Okay, so the best one, or the one which a lot of people are using, is like gradient descent method. Okay, so they use gradient descent method. Okay, so basically what they are doing is, let's say we have some mountain of the form this. Okay, sorry for my drawing skills. So let's say we have a loss over here. So what we generally do, we calculate slope, and we based on this slope direction and value, we try to minimize this loss value. Okay, so if you consider height as a loss, then based on this slope and everything, you just try to minimize this loss. Okay, and then you go down. Okay, so this is a gradient descent method. Okay, and that's how you minimize this loss. So then how exactly we are using means if we are planning to minimize this loss, then how exactly we can use this thing, or how exactly we can use this means optimization value in our network. Okay, so as I said earlier, so W1 and W2 is something which represent or like affect accuracy of our network. Okay, so what we generally do, we let's say this loss is delta E value. Okay, so what we generally do, using gradient descent method, we try to update values of weight and biases. Okay, so there is a formulation of this shape. So weight value, updated weight value is equal to previous weight value minus alpha. So alpha is basically learning rate. So the rate at which you means learning should happen into this thing. Basically, it's like the rate at which like you should move in along each direction. Okay, and then this error due to this weight value 1. Okay, so you use this sort of thing. Okay, so W is equal to W minus alpha and delta I divided by delta W or delta B. Okay, so you calculate this thing using like chain rule. Okay, simple rule. Okay, so it's not that hard. You can like write code for that thing, and it will give you like means first of all you calculate loss, then you use this loss value over there and you update your weights. Okay, so this formulation is something come from this gradient descent method. Okay, so this gradient descent method has like various forms, like stochastic gradient descent method. Then you have like means you can go for like RMS prop, or you can go for Adam. Then you can go for like momentum. Okay, so basically there are various means when you go for this sort of optimization problem, there are chances of getting stuck into local minimums. Okay, so to deal with that thing, means we use like stochastic gradient method, or stochastic gradient method is basically you tend to start from like multiple random positions, and that's how you tend to like or you try to reach to like global minimum. Okay, or you can use earlier stopping of your training. What you also do is you can like use some momentum value. So basically you consider average of 4 5 previous values, and base you using that momentum value, you tend to come out of this local minimum. Okay, so that is like that momentum RMS method. Then in RMS in Adam method, in Adam method we combine everything together. Okay, so that's basically a unconstrained optimization thing, and using that method we update our weight. Okay, so basically during feed forward operation it's going in this direction. We calculate output, we calculate we compare with this thing with like expected output value, we get loss value. We want to reduce that loss, so we use gradient descent or various unconstrained optimization problems, and we get this error. Then we use back propagation, and during this back propagation we update our weight and bias value. Okay, and then we keep doing this thing in some iterations, and that's how we get our network trained. Okay, so how many times you are going through this, means how many times your entire data is going through this network, is something we call as like one epoch. Okay, so let's say you have like 1,000 images. If 1,000 images are going like 2 times through this network, then we call it like means for our training we are using 2 epochs. Okay, and then again the 1,000 images something we are not sending at a time. Okay, so we are splitting them into batches. Okay, and then we are also using shuffling over there, so that we would like get some variation in that input data. So there are various tricks that we use to get this training done effectively. Okay, so basically this is the way in which like deep neural network works. First is a feed forwarding operation, and then there's a back propagation operation, and that's how we get our network trained, and then we test it. Okay, so then there is a training accuracy and testing accuracy. So thing is that testing accuracy should be more than training accuracy for all the times, and that's how you decide whether your network is underfitted or overfitted. Okay, so underfitted and overfitted, this thing is something that depends on bias and variance trade-off. Okay, so if your bias is too large, okay, if your bias value is too large, then in that okay, so if your bias value too large, so in that situation what you generally get is you get your network is like overfitted, variance is too large. Okay, so in that situation your network might not generalize. Okay, but when your bias value is minimum but variance is too large, then we call that network as like underfitted network. Okay, but thing is that we want our network to be simple, but we really don't want our network to be underfitted. So to get like generalized network, what we generally do, we go for overfitted network, and overfitted network is something come out of this complex architecture. Okay, and then what we use regularization methods, like we use dropout, we use early stopping method, we use like L1 L2 regulations. Okay, and using all these techniques or momentum, or using all these methods, we can means we can convert that overfitted network into generalized network, and that's something we can use for like inference purpose. Okay, so that's all about theory of this deep neural network. Guys, do you have any question related to this thing? If you don't have any question, then we can like go back to like our tutorial part.
Mayur, can you explain CNN and RNN once again?
Okay. So thing is that let's say this is like a normal input layer, and this is the output layer. Okay, so let's say we just have like some simple table over here. Okay, I'm just talking about artificial neural network. Okay, so you have like X values over here. Okay, and you have Y values over here. Okay, so we have like 10 X values and 10 Y values. Okay, so if we consider Y is equal to X square, so when X is equal to 1, Y is equal to 1, X is equal to Y is equal to 4. Okay, so we have like 10 values. So here we can directly feed this feed these X values over here at input, and we can compare results with our output values. Okay, and that's how we can get our network trained. That's clear. So that's the artificial neural network, right? But thing is that when we want to solve any kind of particular problem or application related to computer vision, so in that situation, the image or the thing that we're gonna get at an input is an image. Okay, So let's say we have image of the size 28 by 28. Okay. So means if we consider that as like some sort of like square, and then if you split that into like 28 by 28 pixel values, then you will have like around 784 pixels over there, right? So if you consider this two-dimensional matrix into one-dimensional vector, then you can feed this image over here, means you can convert that into like this one column, and you will have like that means image means this for each pixel you will have like some sort of output, right? So means you can get this 784 as a input, and you have like some output as like it could be like cat, it could be dog, it could be like some sort of handwritten digit or anything. Okay, so you will have like one output and 784 as input. Okay, but thing is that here you own, so image is something is like two-dimensional representation, right? So the way I have shown over here, so let's say we have this circle. It's not that obvious circle, okay, but let's say this is a circle, so you can see like it's going through a lot of pixels, right? But if you feed this as like 784 means vector of size 784, 1 by 784, then you won't be able to maintain this relationship between all these adjacent pixels, right? So you might be get like adjacent pixel, but how will you maintain relation between this first and this fourth pixel? Okay, right, Prabhanjan?
Yes, yes.
So you won't be able to maintain this means relation between like these adjacent pixels. Okay, so basically that's something we call as like spatial relationship. Okay, so if you have to maintain this spatial relationship, and that's something relevant in the case of images, okay, and a lot of tasks of computer vision, we use a convolutional layer over here. Okay, so basically what we have in convolutional layer, we have one kernel. Okay, so kernel is basically 2 by 2 size pixel. Okay, so like, so here you can consider it as like one kernel of size 2 rows and 2 columns, and you can traverse this kernel across the length and height of this image. Okay, so at one moment you will have it over here, then you will like traverse it to right by one pixel, then another one pixel, another one pixel. Okay, and you do a Hadamard operation between these kernel values and image value beneath, and you get some values. Okay, but still its shape will remain same. Means if there is like some proper thing is going on over there, if you use proper padding, okay, its shape will remain same. Okay, remain. So that way you would be able to maintain relationship between these two adjacent pixel, right? But thing is that you also want to maintain relationship between this third pixel over here. Okay, between with these first two pixels. Okay, so in that situation you use max pooling layer over here. Okay, so in max pooling what you do, for this 4 pixel you represent them using only 1 pixel value. Okay, so there are various, so in case of the max pooling you choose maximum value out of this 4 value, and that's how you reduce the size of image by like half. Okay, so its size will be reduced. Okay, and once it's reduced you again use kernel. Okay, so the first, if in earlier layer, if this kernel was covering this first uh means first 2 rows and 2 columns, then in next operation when its size will half, so in that situation that kernel will cover like this part as well. Okay, so it might cover like larger part. Okay, so it might cover larger part, so that way you would be able to maintain relationship between all these adjacent pixels. Okay, and then you again use max pooling layer to reduce its size, and finally you reach to like some representation, and that's something we call as a feature vector. Okay, and then we flatten that layer. So when I say flatten, so basically we are moving for that from that two-dimensional space, and we are converting that into like one-dimensional vector. Okay, and then we are feeding that one-dimensional vector to our artificial neural network, and we are getting some output, and we are comparing that with our output value. Okay, expected out value, we are calculating loss, and based on this derivative of this loss with respect to weights, we update our weight values, and same goes for bias values, and that's how we do back propagation operation, we get our network train. Okay, so that's all about convolutional neural networks. So here we are maintaining spatial relationship. Okay, so now about recurrent neural network. Okay, so recurrent neural networks is something formed
Just a minute.
to
So we use convolution layer to maintain space relationship between pixels, and max pooling layer to maintain relationship between kernels. Am I right?
yeah, in a way you can say that. Okay, so but basically you use convolutional layer to get that spatial relationship between adjacent pixels, max pooling layer to reduce size of that image. Okay, but if you use convolutional layer and max pooling layer combined, then you can get that your objective accomplished. Okay, so that way you would be able to like cover larger area. Okay, so because in first layer you might be able to just observe point. In next this, if you combine these two layers as a one, then in first layer you might be able to see one point. In next layer you might be able to connect these dots together, you might be able to get line out of it. If you like take third layer, then you might be able to like combine two lines together and you might be able to get like two-dimensional geometry out of it. Okay, you might be able to get some contour. Then you might go further and you might be able to get some complex figure out of it. Okay, could be face or could be ears or could be eyes or anything. Okay, so that's how this goes. Okay, so this is about convolutional neural network.
Okay.
Then in case of the recurrent neural network, so let's say as I said earlier, so let's say we have like 784 values over here and we have 784 values at output as well. Okay, but these values is something we have received at different time instances. Like it could be at like 0 time instance, it's like 0.1 second, 0.2 second, 0.3 second. Okay, so when you like so you can directly form relation between like input and output, but that might not be like proper representation, like okay, like right, because y value at the second time step is like depend on y value at first time step, and that's how and in a way it also represent it also dependent on x value at time instance 0, right? Means it's not just depend on time x value at time instance 1.1, right? So you need to consider previous values as well. So when we have to means consider this sort of temporal relationship between input data, so in that situation we use recurrent neural network. Okay, so in that situation we replace this convolutional neural network with LSTM. Okay, LSTM or GPUs. Okay, what's that? Yeah, LSTM is something we use extensively. There is one more thing that we use. I'm kind of forgot on that thing. Okay, but that's the LSTM layer. Okay, so that's something we use to maintain relationship between this input data. Okay, and then we just like pass them through LSTM layers. Then we pass them through like hyperbolic tangent. Then we get like feature vector representation, and then we pass it through these things. Okay, so that's something we use for natural language processing, and when we have to solve some sort of like battery management system problem or something related to like means when you have to solve such sort of problem where you have to maintain or like we have to consider sequence or like flow of data in time along time axis. So in that situation you use recurrent neural network. Okay, is this thing clear to you, Prabhanjan?
Yeah,
Hello?
no, I don't get that, the recurrent neural network. So is temporal relation means time dependent relations?
Yes, time dependent. So your